I always treated anatomy boxes like symbolic shapes. I drew a cube for the torso and then attached legs and arms to it. But it always looked wrong. Then I applied a concept from a day job as a software engineer. Bounding boxes. Where the box isn't the torso, it's the space occupied by it. When the box is wrong, no render can save the pose. And since I'm always needing some kind of rule set to apply, I'm giving you my way of constructing the torso using this two-box method. So you will always know why something looks wrong. No guessing, just rules, so we can break them later. We start with two primitives, a ribcage box and a pelvis box. Then we connect them with a line for the spine. These boxes are solid objects. They have a front, side, and a top or bottom plane. Notice the spine. It connects them, and when the torso bends, it comes from the spine changing direction, not the length. So the boxes themselves remain rigid. They do not bend. They just tilt and rotate. To place these boxes, use this rough algorithm. Split the total torso height in half. The top half is the ribcage zone. Split the bottom half again, and the lowest quarter is the pelvis zone. This gives you a 1/2, 1/4, 1/4 distribution, but it's a variable guideline. Depending on the figure, these ratios may change. In a natural standing position, both boxes are slightly tilted. The ribcage box is tilted upward, while the pelvis box is tilted downward. Let's see how these interact. The ribcage and pelvis often rotate in opposite directions. This creates a twist. The waist is a transition zone between the two boxes. It's not a box itself. This is a common mistake beginners make. Its width and compression are purely a result of the two boxes interacting. Squeeze the boxes together and the waist compresses. Pull them apart and the waist stretches. Notice how the boxes stay solid while the space between them changes. For the perspective, we always need to make sure both boxes exist in the same coordinate system. If your ribcage shows the bottom of the plane, because we're looking up at it, pelvis must follow the same perspective rules. You cannot mix camera angles. And don't guess the pelvis. Construct it on the same grid. Next, differences in male and female structures. For females, the ribcage is narrower, while the pelvis is wider. The result is an X-like silhouette. And notice, the navel sits slightly below the narrowest point of the waist. Males usually have a wider ribcage, while the pelvis is narrower. This causes this epsilon-like silhouette, and the navel lines perfectly up with the waistline. But keep in mind, these are averages, not strict rules, but they give you a starting point. Let's have a look at the important landmarks. These are your anchors. If they are correct, the torso will always read correctly, even without the details. First, the stable landmarks. These points move with the rigid boxes. First, we have the sternum. This is your center line for the upper torso. It dictates the rotation of the ribcage. If the sternum points left, the ribcage is rotated left. Second, the causal arc, or the ribcage base. This defines the upper boundary of the waist. It never slides up or down. It is fixed to the lower edge of the box. Third, the pelvis top plane. This anchors the bottom of the waist. Its angle tells you immediately if the pelvis is tilted forward or backward. And last, for the stable landmarks, we have the spine. One continuous line, all the way from the neck on top down to the bottom of the pelvis. This brings us to the relative landmarks. These deform between the boxes and change based on movement. First, we have the ribcage to pelvis distance. It compresses on the bending side and expands on the stretching side, but it never vanishes completely, and the bones cannot touch. Second and last for the relative landmarks, we have the abdominal surface. It stretches flat when the torso extends back, and it bunches or overlaps when the torso compresses forward. But it never looks like solid bricks when in motion. Up to this point, the boxes were not the body. They were bounding boxes, volumes that reserve space and define orientation. Now we add volume, but we do not replace the boxes. We test them. Muscle masses don't perfectly wrap the boxes. They interweave with them, sometimes sitting inside the bounds and sometimes pushing past them. This is especially important for the ribcage. The box gives you width, depth, and direction. Start by placing the ribcage inside the upper box. The box still tells you which planes are facing the viewer. The volume simply occupies part of that space. On top of this egg-like shape, we add the shoulder girdle. The clavicles sit across the top plane of the ribcage and point outward from the sternum. They tell you how wide the shoulders are and which way the ribcage is rotated. From the clavicles and the sternum, the pectoral muscles fan outward and attach into the upper arm. Their origin is anchored to the ribcage, and their surface orientation is driven primarily by the ribcage box. When the ribcage rotates, the pecs rotate with it. When the arm moves, the pecs stretch and change tension, but they do not redefine the torso's orientation. For female torsos, the breasts are soft surface forms that sit on top the upper ribcage volume, overlapping the pectoral mass. They are anchored to the ribcage, not the arms, and therefore rotate with the ribcage box. Their shape is governed primarily by gravity and ribcage orientation, not by arm movement or pose intention. When the arms lift, the ribcage may rotate, but the breasts do not chase the arm. They respond only to the ribcage tilt and gravity. Now the pelvis. The bottom edge of the pelvis box marks the crotch. The top edge lines up roughly with the iliac crest. It's the bony ridge that sometimes shows on the surface, especially in lean or female figures. This top edge is a very useful landmark. It tells you where the external obliques end and where the abdominal mass begins to transition into the ribcage. Speaking of the abdominal area, it's not contained by either box. It bridges them. It's one continuous surface stretching from the costal arc down to the pelvis. When the torso extends, the surface stretches and flattens. When the torso compresses, it bunches and overlaps. The box interaction we set up earlier tells us exactly which of those happens. On the side, below the pectorals, you can indicate the serratus. Think of this as a rhythm that helps transition from the ribcage volume into the abdominal surface. Let's have a look at the back. We again start with the structure and layer volume on top. The trapezius spans from the shoulders down toward the middle of the spine. It sits across the top plane of the ribcage and helps define the slope from neck to shoulder. Below that, the latissimus dorsi hangs from the side of the ribcage and flows into the lower back. This muscle has a large impact of the silhouette. It can exceed the side plane of the ribcage bounding box and so strongly affect the silhouette. As the arms lift, the lats stretch and narrow. As the arms lower, they widen and fill more space. Between the trapezius and the lats is the shoulder mechanism, the rotator cuff. You don't need to isolate these muscles. Just be aware that this area exists so you don't collapse the form. At this stage, the boxes have already done their job. Volume does not replace structure, it negotiates with it. Solve the boxes first, then let the muscles describe the surface. Okay, now let's have a look at some common mistakes. Mistake 1. Turning the waist into a box. The waist is a soft tissue connecting two hard solids, so treat it like a drapery between the boxes. Mistake 2. Breaking perspective. Always draw your horizon line first, explicitly or in mind. If you can't see the top of the ribcage, you shouldn't see the top of the shoulders. Mistake number 3. Attaching breasts to the arms. Breasts attach to the ribcage box. They rotate with the ribcage, not the arms. They react to gravity, not the pose intention. Anatomy is complex, but it follows rules. If you can build the wireframe correctly, then the rendering becomes easy. If the wireframe is wrong, no amount of shading will fix it. I'm Nima. I share the art fundamentals I'm learning every month. And if you want to know how I practice drawing the torso using 100 torso sketches, watch this video next. Now, go practice and always keep drawing.